Report pretty interesting. We've been very active. Actually, I don't remember not being active in this project, but I figured there's a lot of good news here that I think it's worth pointing out. Again, I try to do it visually because there's so much data that we can kind of get lost in the noise. So let's start by, again, these are all the sites that we normally keep track of, and there's other sites that we don't keep track of because those are local municipalities or counties that decide they want to purchase local enhancements, and so they've done that. So even though we keep awareness of all that stuff, we don't track it because it's really, these are just separate projects. All right, so one of the things I did here was, I know that it's really hard to see the site names, and so for the most part, I haven't been showing that, but this time I figured it's probably worth showing out, and since I'm breaking everything out on a regional basis, it helps you be able to see all the site names throughout. So in Region 1, we have 23 sites, and hopefully you can see on the screen easier now all the site names throughout the state in Region 1. So we have, in that region, we have 3 sites that haven't started, and I'll go through that. But we have 3 active builds, civil completions, and civil F&E complete. Those are pretty decent milestones. What's changed from last time is I've highlighted here with the red circles. Autobahn Out, for example, has gone to civil completion. That means that the tower, the shelter, generator, all the civil work has been completed at the site. If you notice over here, this little red dot, so if the dot is red, it means that we have power at the site. So we've been able to power it. One of the headaches with this is that getting power to the sites has been somewhat slow, right? It's kind of out of our control. We got to wait for the utility companies to do their thing. We got to get on their queues, and so all that process takes time. Some of the utility companies close down in the winter. They're starting to open up now. So it's been slow, and what happens if you have a site that doesn't have power, then that affects what you can do at that site plus the sites that it connects to. So it's sort of the whole daisy chain effect here. But most importantly, what I want to point out here is what's changed here at the Hardin site. We were stuck in regulatory. We are past regulatory, so we've ordered the tower. And also at Hooper, which is in Warren County, we've also completed regulatory, and we've ordered the tower for that. All right, in addition to that, we have over here the Marshall and the Tama sites that we had completed civils, but we didn't have power yet. So now we do have power to those sites. So a lot of activity. If you look at Region 2, again, we have 11 sites in that region. Not a lot of changes here. Obviously, look at all these red dots. That means that we have power in all those sites. We have these 2 sites that we've completed civil, but we don't have power in those sites yet. One is an IPTV site, and the other one is a lease site. Those are the 2 sites that we haven't started the actual work. The good news is that the work is about to start within a week or 2 for both of those sites. Same deal over here for Calhoun and Region 1. I forgot to point that out. So why, when we look at not started, well, this is a lease site. We just ordered the tower for Hardin. We just ordered the tower for Hooper, and we're expecting to start next week. That means that by the time we meet next week, next month, these will be active civil sites. And depending on how things go, if we can move fast enough, we may even get 1 or 2 that are actually completed by then. Okay. Region 3, we have 14 sites. We've had 1 that changed status from, so in Palo Alto, We had ordered a tower last time around. We were waiting for resources to be made available. So we started working in Palo Alto now. So when we show here one site that's not started, that would be the IPTV site over here. Again, we provided the drawings. We have all the agreements in place. Again, all the IPTVs and the lease sites are just about to start. Okay. Region 4. We've had a lot of good changes here. We've had these sites that we had completed civil, but we didn't have power. Now we do. We have power in Shelby. We have power at Adair North and Adair South. That means that we can have our techs starting to do some work there as well. So in Region 4, there are no towers that haven't been started. So every tower has been started, completed, or in the process. Region 5, again, most of the sites have power. We have, as you can see here, 3 sites that haven't started. Those are the lease sites, which is Davis and Muscatine. And then we have an IPTV site in Keosauqua. So we currently have 2 sites that are active builds right now, Loiza and Beaverdale. And these other 3 are just about to start. Again, I was able to visit with the company that's leasing the sites. It's American Tower Corporation. We visited with them actually on Tuesday. So again, we have all the paperwork done, all the insurance done, and so again, we're just about to start any moment now. And then Region 6, we have Cedar Falls, which is becoming active. So we have 3 active sites here, and 1 that hasn't been started because that's the Dubuque site, which is a leased tower site. So when I go through all the numbers, the one that we always focus on and that people at least internal to Motorola tend to focus on is what hasn't been started. And so we have a total of 10 sites that haven't been started, but if you work the numbers, 5 of those are lease sites, 3 of them are IPTVs, and then the 2 that we just ordered the towers for, which is Hardin and Hooper. So what this tells us is we've completed the regulatory process for all of the sites. We have no pending sites anymore. And that's a huge milestone for us because there's always that uncertainty if the one site moves, what happens to the sites that connect to it. And that's always a big challenge for us. And every time we've moved sites, some of these sites we've moved 7 times. We have some that we've moved actually 9 times. And it always trickles down to the adjacent sites. We've had run coverage every time we move a site to a new location, or we have to change the altitude, the elevation. We keep on running the coverage maps because it's a balance of connecting the sites and providing the required mobile coverage for the state, which is 95%. Right now, we're at roughly about 97% of the state being covered. So with the movements and the design adjustments, the performance has actually gotten better. So what we're looking at next is coverage testing. A couple of things I wanted to mention about that. We're looking at about 8 weeks of duration to do the coverage testing. This is going to be an automated bit error rate, and what that means is that we tell the system to put out a test pattern, and once it starts putting out a test pattern, we have computers with software that connect to radios and GPS, and we have a mag mount antenna that gets mounted to the top of a vehicle, and we use a GPS software to tell us, well, the way it's supposed to work is in these vehicles we'll have a driver, we prefer it to be law enforcement personnel. And then we have in the back a representative for the state and a representative for Motorola. The folks in the back are telling the driver where to go. As we're driving by, we see a map of the roads that we're targeting for testing, and we tell them turn left, turn right. And as we enter to each one of these tiles, the software automatically recognizes that it's inside a test tile, and it takes a whole bunch of samples, and then it either passes or fails a tile, and we move on.
Do you then talk on the radio, say, can you hear me now?
They can, but that's not how this particular, the can you hear me now is a subjective test. The bit error rate is objective, so it tells you exactly if you're passing or not based on the audio, but it's based on bit errors. So the way it works is a system like this, a digital system. When you look at an analog system, normally it's all about the signal strength. And the furthest you go, the audio quality starts degrading over time, and then eventually you can't understand it anymore. In a digital system, we have what's called a forward error correction. So there is the voice information, and then that's encapsulated with error bits that can fix problems with the audio. So when you capture it on the other side, if there's problems, the error correction algorithm actually fixes the problems. So in order for it to work correctly, that means that we can accommodate up to 2% bit error rate in order to satisfy the quality of the audio that's required by the RFP. So the software knows, because it's all digital, it knows exactly what is your bit error rate, and if it exceeds 2%, then it fails a test tile. So it's really it's automatic, so you don't have to do the "Can you hear me now" thing. Although some people like to do that anyway, but overall, it's really all about the bit error rate.
Will the test vehicle be in motion when it's doing the sampling, or do
Correct.
they stop and go, stop and go?
No, it has to be in motion. Yes, we have. See here, we're looking at about 100,000 test tiles for the state, and these test tiles are 3/4 miles. And we're looking at between 10 and 12 teams to do this at the same time. Yes.
Melvin, this is Chris. So for the 2% bit error rate, that's with the desired audio quality that was spec'd on the RFP.
Correct.
The "Can you hear me now" test, if I follow this right, we're actually testing this to a higher standard than "Can you hear me now?" So you, in theory, could have a bit error rate of 5% or more and still get the audio through, right?
If you have more than 2% error rate, you start hearing some of the garbling.
Okay.
Is it intelligible? Yes, but the requirement is a specific line that says a delivered audio quality of 3.4, which is the highest for public safety. You can go as far as 4, but then that gets really expensive.
Yeah. So more or less, it's going to exceed basically the minimum of being able to decipher what's being said. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
How fast is the vehicle going when you're testing?
You can go as fast as you want, which at 100,000 test tiles, I would recommend going really fast.
Got a lot of dirt roads.
And this is one of the reasons why we talked about working with other stakeholders, because it is grueling, it is hard. Most folks are excited about it the first day. By the time the third day, they just, they'd rather cycle somebody else through, because it gets old. The cool thing is that you get to see a lot of very, very unique places that you didn't even know were there. I've driven around looking at some of this stuff, and I found a town called Melvin, which I was excited about. And there's a place, and my PM took a picture, I should have brought it in here, where we found Iowa has the largest, the largest popcorn ball. So I said, hey, this is really great. So you're gonna find a lot of places that you didn't know were there, and you're also gonna run into places that people don't want you there, which is why we want law enforcement to be involved in this. I think I mentioned this before, we've done it before with Department of Transportation personnel, but we've learned that people get really suspicious because they think that their property is being looked at for building a road or something like that. So in order to accommodate this, we're looking at segmenting each region, splitting them in order to do something that's manageable and that the tool can handle. So we came up with two sub-regions within a region, and that's basically how we come up with 12. So we have an A and a B, for example, in Region 1. So this is the more obscure areas here. That would be 1A. The lighter would be 1B. Same deal over here, Region 2, Region 3, and so forth. In terms of number of test tiles, these numbers would give you a better idea. So Region 1, the eastern side is over 16,000 test tiles, and the western side would be about 7,000 test tiles. So right now here we're showing we have 14,351, but not all of those test tiles can be tested because some of these places you just can't reach. The software requires, in order to be statistically significant and meaningful, it requires a minimum of test tiles, which we've basically made it. If you go below a certain level, then statistically the number doesn't become very accurate, so the more test tiles, the better. So I want to show this concept so that it would help you better understand. So in this case, I'm zooming in because it's really hard to look at it, when you're looking at the entire state. So if I look at the Des Moines metro area here, this is what this map shows, and this is how we would grid it, right? So we would have all these test tiles over this, and as we're driving through, which is a red dot, the samples get taken, and the test tile, in this case, I'm expecting them all to pass, so I make them green. Right, so as you drive by, some of these test tiles, you get the little corner of it. Some of them will be in the middle. It all depends on the specifics of the road. So as you make it through, again, this is just one road that we're showing here. You imagine doing this for the entire state. So if I were to just, as an example, in this particular area, well, now you would see that in this case, we have a couple, you can see here, right, a couple of wedge squares. These would be squares that failed, and then everything else is green. So at a statewide level, this is kind of what we expect to see. A wall of green with a couple of dots red here and there. At the end, we'll be producing a report that says what we did, how we did it, and then there's going to be some very long tables. So here I'm providing an example of a local county that I did in Missouri. In this case, so you can see that we have, and this is a lot of pages. In this case, it was 102 pages for one county. So that gives you an idea of how much data there is. So in this case, for example, here's our test tile number 1. And we can give them grid numbers, X and Y, and all that kind of stuff. In this case, even though we're looking for the bit error rate, we still are able to gather the received signal indicator, as an example. So we get all that stuff and we dump it in here because the tool just creates a huge file, which at the end of each day, we can just take that, dump it, and then eventually we build these files so that everybody can take a look at it. So in this case, you can see that for test tile number 1, we achieved a bit error rate of 0.4%, so the target is 2%, so we obviously pass. Here's a couple of fails, like down here, this is test grid 13. We got a bit error rate of 4.4, so this particular test grid failed. So you'll get this, but just at a much, much, much larger scale. And we'll probably just split it on a regional basis just to try to make it somewhat manageable for somebody to look at. That's all I had. Any questions?
Any particular time of year that's best?
To do the cover testing, we want foliage. So we don't want to start until spring starts, but, you know, you go through the rainy season, which is a real pain when you're doing coverage testing. So we prefer, you know, early, like really early summer, right? So it all depends. I think, you know, you can go anywhere from, again, depending on the region, spring starts earlier in some, you know, the further south you go, right? So you can go anywhere from April through September to do the cover testing.
Okay.
So overall, you know, the biggest thing here is that we pass all the regulatories. That means we can consider the system locked down, which means that now we have a certain stamped, you know, stop a view of what the coverage looks like. So it's no longer fluctuating because all the sites are locked down. We know where we stand, and we're continuing to build and add sites. You know, as an example, Region 4 will be doing the outreach, which we already have sites available and up and running out there in Region 4, which is Council Bluffs area. So you have a radio in Council Bluffs area, you can still talk to people over here right now. So we're, you know, as we add more, it just gets better.